Now, we all enjoy F1, and whether you like it or not, one thing that's part of it is the constant gamesmanship and the pushing engineering to the limits. We recently got that uneasy news that the FIA released information right in the dying minutes of pre-season testing, so it was hard for me to include that in the last video. The FIA and Ferrari reached a settlement on the alleged engine rule breaks. Now, this news got the F1 community really talking. It made me want to look at other cases where teams have been found cheating or even accused of it. Welcome to the F1 house. My name is Sakki, and keep watching to find out about 6 occasions where teams have been found guilty of cheating or accused. Time to dig some dirt for these 6 examples. So jumping straight in, number 1. In 1984, the Teal Team had its results stripped after a technical infringement. After the Detroit Grand Prix, where Martin Brundle had finished second, word went round that officials found impurities in the water injection system. Based on these impurities in the water, which had been topped up during the race at a pit stop, it was decided that the team had been refueling the car during the race. Now, you might think, this is fine, refueling was allowed back then. In fact, refueling had been banned in the previous season and remained illegal until 1994. So as a result, they were found guilty and disqualified from the remainder of the World Championship. They were allowed to and did choose to race. However, they took the smart choice of not appearing at the final 3 races of the season. So number 2, this one happened in 1994 and involved Benetton's alleged traction control car, as well as some controversy surrounding refueling. Now, I found this one quite interesting because it's 2 allegations of cheating that had such different outcomes. One of them in particular making me think about the current allegations that Ferrari cheated during the 2019 season. First up, we have the allegations that Benetton's car was using traction control. At the time, the cars were driven by Michael Schumacher and Jos Verstappen. Throughout the season, Michael Schumacher was lightning off the start line. A lot of the drivers on the grid believed that they were cheating. This was eventually investigated by officials. At the governing body council meeting that was looking into another issue, it announced that there was no evidence that had been found to suggest that Benetton were using illegal electronic systems, but they did say that an illegal system did exist, which could have been activated at any time. So it's a bit of a tough one. They had the ability to use the traction control, but who actually knows if they used it? I don't think we will ever truly know. It's highly unlikely that we'll hear it from Michael Schumacher, but maybe Flavio Briatore will give us the truth one day. So staying on the topic of Benetton, in 1994, in that same year, there was a refueling fire on Jos Verstappen's Benetton car at the German Grand Prix. This was followed by allegations and an investigation. What was the outcome of that investigation? The FIA announced that Benetton had been using a fuel valve without the fuel filter that allowed fuel into the car 12.5% faster than the legal fuel valve. Unlike the traction control, this was clear and obvious breach of the rules, but they got off scot-free and without punishment. Now, I really want to hear your opinion. Do you think they actually cheated? Do you think they used that system? Leave a comment down below and let us know what you think. Give us a like if you're enjoying the content. It really helps the channel out. Subscribe and hit that notification bell. So number 3, BAR's hidden fuel tank. So in 2005, BAR was banned from 2 races when its car was found to have a secondary fuel tank that meant it could run during the race under the weight limit. When the second tank was full, the car met the FIA's weight requirements, but when it was drained, it went under the minimum limit. So after discovering the secondary tank, the stewards decided that they couldn't be certain that the car was running at legal weights at all times during the race, and said that BAR should have checked with the FIA before introducing that extra tank. So what was the punishment for the team? BAR was banned from the Spanish and Monaco Grand Prix. Number 4, 2007 McLaren and Ferrari Spygate. So this one is probably the most widely known case of cheating and scandal. I remember the news breaking in the motorsport world and being in the mainstream news, which is kind of big. So what actually happened? Given the briefest summary possible, McLaren's chief designer, Mike Laughlin, was at the centre of the case after it was revealed that he'd received documents from Ferrari's engineer, Nigel Stepney. The effects of the scandal coming out was huge. McLaren was disqualified from the 2007 championship and fined $100 million, the largest fine in Formula 1 history, for benefiting from secret data from Ferrari. Both of the men at McLaren and Ferrari were fined from their roles at their respective teams, and McLaren had to submit the designs to the FIA to ensure no ideas were copied. Despite the team's disqualification, drivers Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso were allowed to keep their points. Pretty juicy, right? Well, it's about to get even more interesting when we move on to the next one. 2008 takes us to number 5, which was Renault and Piquet Jr.'s Crashgate. So this all came to light with Nelson Piquet Jr.'s revelation that he'd crashed deliberately at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, which literally shook the sporting world. We all know that cheats exist in most sports, including F1, but this took it to another new level. For any driver to voluntarily crash his car at a high speed, putting himself, drivers and spectators at increased risk, this was utter craziness. Following on from the crash, a hearing quickly followed, and Renault's team boss, Flavio Briatore, was banned from the sport for an indefinite time period. Pat Simmons, the technical director, was banned from the sport for 5 years. The team itself was handed a 2-year suspended ban, but the wider, more problematic consequence was that their title sponsor pretty much immediately pulled the funding from the team following the huge embarrassment. Now, this is pretty bad behaviour for a team with such a huge history. It makes me wonder, what have people actually been doing previously just to ensure that they get results that have just not been found out or not been discovered? And lastly, number 6. This happened in 2013 and was the illegal mid-season tyre testing by Mercedes. So this is probably the most recent case where a team has been found to be breaking the rules and effectively cheating. It came about in 2013, where all the teams had been packed up and moved away from Barcelona. Word soon spread that Mercedes had carried out an illegal tyre test on the current car. The FIA's F1 sporting regulations at the time were pretty clear, stating that teams were not allowed to test current F1 cars during the season, except for straight-line aerodynamic tests and young driver tests. In addition to this, they were only allowed to run cars that were 2 years old or more. Ferrari conducted a secret 500km test with a 2011 car before the Spanish Grand Prix, and Mercedes would end up running for 1,000 kilometers. The FIA said that it wasn't aware that they would be using the current car and running for more than 100 kilometers. It was not aware that the current drivers would be used for the test and that the test wouldn't be run by Pirelli. So how much did Mercedes actually learn from this tyre testing? Although it was claimed that Mercedes weren't aware of the specific tyres that were given to them, it did give them vital insight into how the tyres worked in certain situations. For example, the lamination. So we know that Mercedes made some changes in their approach to the tyres at following races such as Monaco, in areas such as suspension. This ultimately showed that they had learned a huge amount from the testing. It also gave them an insight to ideas for the following 2014 season. So what was the outcome from the FIA from this illegal testing? Mercedes escaped with a ban from July's young driver test after being found guilty by the FIA for conducting out-of-competition testing with Pirelli tyres. Pretty light, I think, given that the advantage they gained allowed them to go on to win the 2014 championship and many more. That just makes me wonder, if Ferrari in 2019 had gone on to win their championship and the FIA suspected them of cheating but couldn't prove it, that would be so bad for the sport. I think history goes to show that if you can't prove something is illegal, then it's a waste to keep on pursuing it. Looking at all these examples, especially the Benetton one where they were suspected of using traction control, I'm going to say, and it pains me to say this, but perhaps the FIA have taken the only option available to them. In that case, it's hard to be too tough on the way that they've handled Ferrari. I would have loved for them to come out and be more transparent with their findings. I think that's probably what's annoyed people more than anything. I really do think that people and teams are always going to try and push these loopholes to the max in the sport. It's encouraged after all. But where it's clearly cheating, it really doesn't do the sport any good. Let's hope that there's more clarity and openness from the FIA going forward when dealing with issues revolving around foul play, even if they can't prove it definitively. Now, I know there's probably a lot of other examples that I haven't mentioned, which you think should be mentioned, so leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear about them. In the meantime, here are a few honourable mentions. In 1997, Michael Schumacher tried to crash out Jacques Villeneuve. In 2006, Michael Schumacher parking his car and blocking his rival Fernando Alonso from setting a faster time. Liegate, involving Lewis Hamilton and race officials at the Australia 2009 Grand Prix. And that just about finishes off the 6 times that teams have been caught cheating or even just accused. I hope you've enjoyed, everyone. Until next time.